I'd like to welcome you all here tonight. Give yourselves a big round of applause for actually taking the first step and actually taking action for the issues facing the campus and education. When a large group of people collectively bring a claim to court in which a class of defendants is being sued for an injustice, this is called a class action. So we're going to hold court here tonight, if that's okay with you. Metaphorically, class action refers to a group that has been wronged and doesn't sit back and do nothing. Rather, they do something about it. They take action. It is with great honor that I welcome you here tonight to the presentation, Take Class Action, Students Organizing for Social Change. Are you all ready to take action tonight? If you are, make some noise, please. My name is Justin Weiss, and I'll be hosting tonight's event filled with creative spoken word pieces, informative and influential panelists, and an audience that is ready to take action. Take Class Action, Students Organizing for Social Change is sponsored by Civil Discourse and Social Change, a year-long initiative to create a space of civil discourse for students, faculty, staff, and community to come together and become informed on issues of social justice facing our society, and to brainstorm ways to create change, which also includes the great leadership from Reverend James Lawson, who has been instrumental in teaching our CSUN community what it means to take action through disobedience and nonviolence. We're also going to give a round of applause to our second sponsor tonight, the California Faculty Association. Tonight's event is in conjunction with the Day of Unified Action, which is going to take place tomorrow, April 13th, when CFA chapters on each of the 23 campuses in the CSU system, along with allies on college campuses across the country, will hold rallies, demonstrations, teach-ins, and other types of events in support of quality public higher education and fair contracts for the university employees. But to begin, we're going to start tonight with a little bit of a form of expression to kind of set the mood for tonight. So what we're going to do is we're going to welcome two incredible spoken word artists with us tonight. So for your entertainment, I'd like to begin with welcoming a big round of applause for our first poet, Danielle Modewala. Let's give him a big round of applause.
What's going on, guys? How you guys doing? Everyone's good? Cool. Before I get started, I just wanted to say that I'm broke. We're all broke. So you don't need money to make change. So that's kind of okay. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين وإياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. I'm not on the news. I haven't been the feature of any extremist views. You won't see me at the airport, dynamite strapped, wearing all black, everything. I don't turn towers to scrap. My mind is already too fly for that. I don't have a fist-length beard or rock a kufi on the streets. I keep a light stubble, Lupe beats, and rockin' LA fitted. I wish I could read scriptures in my holy Quran, but I blow trees to get lifted. I don't fire AKs, I fire vocal artillery. Mind is strength and bullets aren't gifted. I practice my ideologies and live in this fantasy to turn on Fox News and see their reality. But in actuality, news and media fire subliminal messages daily to the point where we're all being mind-fucked by ignorance, and the outcome continues to be resistance. And I still pray 5 times a day for acceptance, clasp my weak hands in unity and ask for repentance. But I'm trapped behind LAX metal detectors for a life sentence. I'm a Muslim, not a Muslim, but a Muslim. I slam poetry for Islam. I'm not a terrorist. The only thing terrifying about me is my presence. There is no jihad in my faith, and killing is not accepted. Love all everything. There's no such thing as hatred. They claim that beautiful Muslim women are being oppressed. But a real man never treats his queen like a princess. I would carry her pain on my shoulders so she never feels suppressed. Go ahead and call me a raghead because I wear a head rag. Ignorance fuels my emotions. Media is my commotion. Love is my potion. My mind is my focus. Hope is not that far away. Education is knowledge. Is power is respect. So Bill O'Reilly and Glenn Beck, learn to love with a shining red heart. Your ignorant, closed-minded statements are hurting this community, so now I'm calling out both of you. Sit down with the hyphenated Muslim American for an interview. We might clash skulls when we debate, but understand, Islam means peace, not hate. A whole religion shouldn't be based off the extremist beliefs of a particular group's mind state, but you probably won't take me up on my offer. Neither of you have replied to my emails or even called me back, but I can probably understand why. Because you hate people like me, but I pray for people like you. Is a dream really a lie if it doesn't come true? Because now I'm chilling in my Civic, bumping lasers in my car. This dark fantasy is reality. I can't really see freedom from afar. Understand. When the towers fell to the ground, so did we. And I mean, most of us even got buried. And I'm not talking about the World Trade Center rubble. I mean the freedom to practice my religion trouble. I mean, I can't even keep a light stubble. I mean, our foundation is crumbled. I mean, having the name Muhammad will get me stopped at the airport kind of trouble. I'm not going to let Uncle Sam grab me by the throat and hold me down anymore. And if you're chilling in the audience right now and you're feeling what I'm saying, put your wings up and let them soar. I said if you're chilling in the audience and you're feeling what I'm saying, put your wings up and let them soar. My yells will no longer be whispers. They will only get louder and louder and louder and louder to the point where you will see me on the news. Thank you.
Phenomenal, right? We have another outstanding poet for you tonight to set off the evening. I'd like to welcome with a big emphatic round of applause, Miss Kishana Kiki West.
How about now? There we go. Social change right there. Okay, well, I'm gonna be loud today. Social change. Sounds like this. We the people, in order to form a more perfect See, I know her and he knows me, but these conspiracies inside we the people can't let us just be. See, we run in the same races, some of us from the same places. Life that we live are full of these mazes. I know we are tired of smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in this society. I find my words twisted and my speech stammering as I seek to reach out to the generation after me. Following. I want to tell them, don't be plagued with the inner fears, for they will only bring tears. See, social change is live, lived in victory every day. Because the corruption erupted for $1 borrowed, greedy like the Cookie Monster. Chancellor Reed, that's my damn degree. Sitting on a board of trustees. But see, the city is broken. People still killing people and everybody hate each other and I can't afford tuition and water will become the new crack. Town of Bath coming soon. But for all my CSUN graduates, let me leave you with some breadcrumbs like Hansel and Gretel. As you transition across that stage with your degree in your hand, that's the world you'll be stepping into. Food or knowledge for food. Choose whether you win or lose. For your degree is your first step, but knowledge continue to attain. That's the real battle. That's your ticket that would never lose its value, I assure you. I refuse to be silent. I will pay it forward, like to my nephew. But for all of you, what are you going to do? Thank you.
give our spoken word artists one more big round of applause, please, if we could. These are students just like you who show you what it means to have voice, whether it's through creative forms such as spoken word, conversations with your fellow students, whatever it takes, make sure that you honor that voice within you. And that's what we're hoping tonight for you to understand, is that in challenging times such as these, it's not okay to stay quiet. So find your voice. We have some incredible superpower panelists who have found their voice and are hoping to share it with you tonight. And I'd like to begin by introducing them with to my left, if we could. I'd like to welcome Amy Dennison, CSUN Assistant Professor of Sociology. Amy Dennison is an Assistant Professor of Sociology at CSUN, where she coordinates the option in work and society. Her research examines gender and racial ethnic inequalities in the workplace and in access to educational and training programs. She is published in Human Relations and the Journal of Contemporary Ethnography and has conducted research on apprenticeship training for the city of Los Angeles. Please join me in welcoming Amy Dennison. We also have Justin Marks, member of Activist Student Coalition, CSUN student who is an undergraduate and has helped to lead 2 successful marches that have brought issues of education and educational rights to the forefront of Cal State Northridge. Justin exemplifies the motives of not sitting back and complaining when faced with adversity, but has stepped up to take action and create change. Let's welcome Justin Marks, please, with a round of applause. Kathy Pacheco, member of Students for Quality Education, CSUN student. She's an undergraduate student majoring in Gender and Women's Studies department and will also major in Central American Studies at California State University, Northridge. She has been an active member and organizer of Students for Quality Education, SQE, for a year and a half. Students of Quality Education is an organization within the CSU system striving for accessible, affordable, and quality education. Kathy is also actively involved with CSUN's Women's Research and Resource Center and the Gender and Women's Studies Student Association. Let's welcome Kathy with a round of applause, please. Joining us, we also have Alexander Hanna, University of Wisconsin in Madison, and co-president of the Teacher Assistants Association. Alex Hanna is a PhD student in sociology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. He studies social movements in the Middle East and social media. He is a co-president of the Teaching Assistants Association, the union representing teaching and project assistants at UW-Madison. The TAA was a leading organization in the Wisconsin fight against the state's budget cuts and attack on collective bargaining. Before the battle over the collective bargaining began, Alex, who is also of Egyptian descent, was in Egypt during the revolution and witnessed the overthrow of President Hosni Mubarak. Let's welcome Alexander with a big round of applause. And last but not least, we're going to welcome Reverend James Lawson, a visiting scholar to CSUN. This is a man who has helped founded the nonviolence movement in America. A man who has worked with Martin Luther King to revolutionize what it means for social justice in our society. A lot of the great civil rights that we enjoy to this day came from this man who is with us tonight. Above all, something that has left a lasting impression on me is that this is a man who not only cares about the well-being of some, but truly cares about the well-being of all. It's with my pleasure to welcome Reverend James Lawson. And before we conclude, I'd like to mention that Reverend James Lawson's last public lecture is next Wednesday, April 20th, at the Valley Performing Arts Center in room LA 181. So please join us for that as well. Thank you, and I'd now like to turn it over to our panelists.
In 1994, Cal State Northridge made international headlines when it found itself just 2 miles from the center of a 6.7 magnitude earthquake. This earthquake largely destroyed the buildings and infrastructure of the university, causing over $375 million in damage. It took the university 13 years to officially complete its rebuilding, but in 2007, the campus did not have much time to celebrate its renewal, as it quickly learned that it faced another disaster, this time of human origin and economic in nature. As equity hedge fund managers made off with average annual salaries of $650 million, more than 16,000 times what the average full-time worker makes, their helium-filled hedge funds, as Provost Hillenbrand rather generously referred to them, and other toxic assets created a global recession that wiped out over $2 trillion in retirement savings and contributed to staggering state and national deficits. In California, a state deficit of $41 billion in 2009 led to severe cuts to public education. The California State University system is the third largest in the nation, with 23 campuses, 412,000 students, and 23,000 faculty. It received 66% of its budget from state discretionary funds. In 2009, this was $4.2 billion. However, since the 2007-2008 academic year, the CSU has been reduced by $625 million. That is translated into probably an underestimate of about 30,000 fewer students, over 10,000 course reductions in 2009-2010, and a loss of 3,200 faculty since 2007. The Northridge campus in 2009-2010 took a cut of $305 million, or 24% of its base, with a loss of 546 courses and 99 faculty. Faculty and staff were placed on furlough that effectively cut 10% from their pay. At the same time, student tuition and fees tripled from $1,428 in fall 2002 to $4,884 by this coming fall of 2011. Since 2008 alone, this represents an increase of 62%. Now, I've heard some make the argument that while tuition and fees are painful to students, particularly when they are implemented abruptly rather than being spread out incrementally over time, nonetheless, students in California pay much lower tuition costs than the national average. And it is true that the cost of tuition and fees at Northridge is less than the national average for public the national average for public four-year colleges. Tuition and fees is $5,076 at CSUN, compared to $5,836, the national average, for a difference of about $800. Thus, increasing tuition at the CSU to the national average would generate some additional revenue. But the underlying assumption that such an increase would be fair or equitable or perhaps even not harmful to our students, after all, we're only raising our tuition to the national average, bears additional scrutiny. I wasn't a student that long ago, and I distinctly remember that what mattered to me, and I suspect what matters to other students, is not simply the cost of tuition, but rather the full cost of college attendance. This includes the cost of tuition, fees, room, board, transportation, and personal expenses. It is the total cost of college attendance that determines whether a student can afford a college degree or not. And when we compare the cost of college attendance, a very different picture emerges. The national average at four-year public colleges is $16,300. At CSUN, it's $22,900. It's darn expensive to live in California. And if we're truly interested in maintaining access to public education, we can't focus narrowly on tuition alone, while ignoring the true costs, the full costs of attaining a college degree. I and two of my colleagues in the Department of Sociology, Dr. David Boynes and Dr. Alexander Gerbasi, became keenly interested in the impact of the budget cut on students, staff, and faculty at CSUN. So in spring of 2010, we conducted a multi-method study consisting of focus groups and online questionnaires. We had around 1,100 students, 128 faculty, and 175 staff participate in the survey. And we also had right around 18 students, 15 faculty, and 15 staff in the focus groups. Our study examined a variety of issues, including the quality of education, accessibility, affordability, procedural justice, and the impact of the cuts on the personal and professional lives of the campus community. And today I'd like to share some of those findings. I'm going to focus primarily on the impact of the cuts on students, but I will include some of the faculty data as well. In describing the budget cuts at Cal State Northridge, both faculty and students resoundingly agreed that the cuts had a negative impact on CSUN as an institution, the quality of education it provided, on the students, the faculty, the administrators on campus, and on themselves individually. In responding to the questionnaire items about their perceptions of the budget situation, a full 97% of the faculty and 89% of the students agreed that the budget cuts had a negative impact on CSUN. And 90% of the faculty and 80% of the students perceived a decrease in the quality of education at CSUN. Further, 88% of the faculty and 76% of the students agreed that they had been personally and adversely affected by the cuts. They also felt, at similar percentages, 98% of the faculty and 89% of the students saw that the cuts had affected their fellow faculty and their fellow students. One faculty member poignantly summed up the sentiment of the impact of the cuts on the quality of education, saying that, quote, "The biggest tragedy about the furlough and other higher education budget cuts is that it's cheating the students out of an education, because I know I'm not giving them the same." Further, almost one-half of faculty and nearly three-fourths of students found themselves searching for alternative sources of income. The budget cuts appear to have drawn faculty and students away from the university for economic reasons. In the interviews with faculty, they were clear in outlining the different ways in which they have been personally affected by the budget cuts. They report distress in various aspects of their lives, including not having enough time for family and friends, to fears of not being able to make payments for homes and cars. The students, in order to pay for fee increases, sought outside employment, and some who already worked increased their hours or took on additional jobs. In this excerpt from a focus group, Henry, this name is a pseudonym, describes the impact of taking a second job. Quote, "One of the reasons why I would choose this school is because it was affordable when I started here, and now it's less affordable. I had to increase my work hours. I work one job and I do tutoring on the side. I started that tutoring this year because I didn't have enough money. That takes time away from my studies, which hurts my grades. So those 30 hours a week working, if I could spend 15 of those hours studying, I would be doing a lot better. I also get a scholarship, which is a godsend, otherwise I'd be working more." In addition to the fee increases, the university simultaneously decreased course offerings as a cost-saving measure. These changes, a fee increase coupled with the decrease in course offerings, compound work education conflicts for students, because at the same time that students need to increase their work hours, they faced an inflexible class schedule that offered fewer sections of each course. The impact on the quality of education, as well as the professional and personal lives of the faculty and the students, was abundantly clear in the study. Larger class sizes, fewer course offerings, fewer class meetings due to the furloughs, fewer faculty, and fewer students meant for a somber class environment. Further, the pressing needs created by fee increases and furloughs drew away students and faculty who had to search out alternative sources of income. The impact on vulnerable groups such as first-generation students, lower-income students, and students of color was even greater, and they had even higher rates of searching for financial aid and other income, as well as reported feeling excluded within the university. The results of our study show that the impact of the cuts have been great. In 1994, the campus of Cal State Northridge was literally shaken to the ground by a massive earthquake that destroyed a lot of the university. 15 years later, another crisis has materialized at CSUN, an unprecedented economic crisis. As a result, the respondents of our study fear that the public university in California has become less accessible, less affordable, and less public.
Hello. Hello? All right. Thank you for that. I didn't bring so many facts with me today, but I've been asked to, I guess, share what my experience has been being introduced to activism, being introduced to people who appreciate academia and understand its role in society and the necessity for equitable education in a democracy. You can't necessarily have a democracy if everybody's not on the same page, if not everybody has the same voting power. I was given a task by Professor Scott. He's an English professor here. He's a Pan-African Studies professor here, and it was to draft a working acceptance letter, I guess you could say, to a law school or graduate school. So it was like two birds with one stone because we're getting credit for it, plus I'm going to need it in like 3 years. Or, no, that's not right. Hopefully not. Hopefully in like 12 months. So, yeah, it was, pray for me. I titled it Rebel with a Cause, and I started with a quote by James Baldwin. "The future is going to be worse than the past if we do not let the people who represent us know that it is our country. A government and a nation are not synonymous. We can change the government, and we will." Now, mind you, this is an acceptance letter, but I started off with, I was arrested and detained for 6 hours. I was put in a concrete box and separated from my freedom. Just moments before, I was one in a diverse crowd of 7,000 chanting, marching, and fighting for the right to equitable education. As hard and as dense as concrete is, it refuses to rebound any warmth or energy or comfort or even anger. Cold concrete stays cold and strips away fervor and passion and turns your convictions soft and muddies your clarity. The caged lion does not roar because the echo of his own voice becomes a taunt, painfully mocking his captivity. Education was supposed to help me sidestep conflict and avoid that all too familiar police contact. And this is only 6 hours in, okay? Try and recall or imagine a birthday you had one year when it seemed that the world, or at least everyone you came in contact with, knew it was your birthday. They may have said something to you or just given you a high five or a look almost saying, yes, today is special. Today is different. March 4th, 2010 was that kind of day. It seemed as though it had been a national holiday, and I guess in some unofficial respects, it was. California State University Northridge, as it's been said earlier, was one of about thousands of college campuses across the nations that participated in the National Day of Action for Education. There were questions that had been sparked, I guess, like in this process of my infancy in activism. Like, why is the burden of the economic crisis being laid on the backs of students and teachers and not the system or systems responsible for it, i.e., military-industrial complex or the prison complex? Who exactly is accountable for the decision to purchase a bomb or build a school or buy a book? Imagine being attacked day after day, year after year. You cannot see your assailant's face, but you start to recognize your own injuries and his pattern of violence. The despair you see in the faces of those you encounter is familiar to and similar to the emotion found in the mirror. It's a relief to finally hear that there are others who have been diligently trying to identify the perpetrator. What they say makes sense to you. Yes, you recognize you've been doing similar works and have a similar list of potential subjects. I'm talking about social justice and the progressive folks who march, protest, campaign, and still have faith in the voting system or the clan that I belong to. Other members of this clan are parents, teachers, artists, lawyers, politicians, some doctors, and yes, even some policemen. Ironically, my father is a policeman, and he has been for more than 2 decades now. So I grew up in a house where his Bible laid next to the copy of Malcolm X, next to his gun, next to his pepper spray, next to his handcuffs, similar to the handcuffs that were on me on March 4th. These were the thoughts I had in captivity, again, only 6 hours in. I was the lion with no bark, no bite, just 4 walls and enough room to contemplate how the rest of my life would be affected by what I had done. Yes, I was sure, like the other thousands, that we were fighting the good fight, but I had broken the rules. I was no longer playing the game. I flew above the radar. I sounded the alarms, and I was literally beat down. I was caught. Yeah, I wasn't alone, but so what? Just because 100 murderers get away doesn't mean that the one who gets caught can point at them with the expectation of leniency or consideration. This process has a way of alienating you. That isolation has a way of turning your consciousness on its side. Outside, I felt connected to my ancestors who struggled and fought to integrate the schools and the nation. But inside, I felt like the common thief whose cellmate is humility and the only visitor he has is despair. Like I had done something extremely silly. I'm a black man in the 21st century. I was supposed to have changed because, of course, yes, it was I who had the problem. I was the misguided youth. Nay, I knew I was black, but I also knew I was smart. I knew that would anger some people, but it would help me beguile some and befriend others. But the system I had a problem with, because I knew the system didn't want me, and if it didn't want me as I was, radical, discontented, energetic, the system would rather have me reading the Bible on Sunday than on a campus in some classroom painting guerrilla art signs preparing to awaken my campus. The system and those in power that would accept me if I looked a certain way. If my attendance record was clean and I finished college in 4 years and didn't dally in political curriculum that wasn't tracked or provided by their system. So I picked up some new tools and I sharpened some old ones. I joined my experiences in my private Christian school where my hair was kept short and napless. Now I'm bald. Where my pants were kept creased and at my waist. I dressed my mind in a entirely separate closet than I did my body. But I mean, it was a fluke, right? And Justin Weiss hyped me up early as leading 2 successful marches, which has some truth to it. On March 4th, I wasn't the organizer. Kathy Pacheco was one of the organizers. I helped to promote it, but it was a fluke. I wasn't supposed to be there. I hadn't been the organizer of the march. I didn't even know that much about the budget cuts at this time. I knew that since I was in middle school, I sensed that there was something wrong with my government and my public high school, it being the bad news bears of the area. But I continued to increase my vocabulary with words like socialism, gang injunctions, Marxism, anarchy. All these words that sounded scary and foreign and sinister to me when I was younger. Since March 4th, Cal State University Northridge and myself has experienced, I believe, an increase in campus awareness. Reverend James Lawson has said many times that we have more activism now in our world than ever before, and I'm so thankful for those of you who came out today and for those of you who will come out tomorrow and continue to spread the word. Thank you.
Hello. So once again, my name is Kathy Pacheco. I'm a Gender and Women's Studies major and Central American Studies major, and I'm with Students for Quality Education, SQE. So I'm just going to give you a little history on SQE. SQE started in 2007 in CSU campuses. Right now there's 18 chapters out of the 23 CSUs, and it's still growing. One of our main, one of the things that we're for is accessible, affordable, and quality education. That's what we're striving for all the time. Some past events that we've done, student organizers did March 4th last year, and we also worked closely with ASC for March 2nd. And November 10th of 2010, we did a carnival at the Board of Trustees meeting, and it was mocking what the Board of Trustees meeting, and it was actually something that has never been done before. So that happened November 10th, and I want to give you some info on April 13th. So tomorrow's action, it's going to be a statewide action. There's 15 out of the 18 SQE chapters are going to be participating on the CSU campuses. We're also going to have, there's 7 other states that are going to be participating in solidarity with us. So it's Connecticut, Massachusetts, Vermont, Washington, New York, Ohio, and Oregon. So students and faculty from these 7 states are also going to be having an action that day. As here for Northridge, we're going to start out with a rally at 11 a.m., leading into a march at 12 p.m., and then at 1 p.m., we're going to have a People's Assembly. And this is something that, as well, we've never done before, and what we want with this People's Assembly is we want you to come out. We want everyone to come out and to be part of the organizing, to be part of the creating that action plan of what to do next. You know, we have a set of demands that we came up with statewide, and I'm just going to go through them. One of our demands our main demand is Chancellor Reed's resignation. He's been in office since '98, and since he's been in office, he hasn't showed that student interest is a priority for him. In the past 2 years, he's given out administration salary increases totaling out to $6.5 million. And so this is why we feel that he is not striving to do the best thing for students and for faculty. So that's why we're asking for his resignation. Our second demand is democratize the CSU Board of Trustees. There's only one person that sits at the Board of Trustees who represents students. Out of all the 23 CSU campuses, only one person represents us. So we want to make sure that there's more student representation, more faculty and staff representation, because this is our university. We should have a say on what happens with our university. Our third demand is full transparency, which there's a bill called SB 8, which is going to open up the books for us to see where money is being allocated to. Right now, we don't know that information, so we don't know where our money is going to. So we want full transparency. We want to know where the money is going. Second demand, actually fourth demand, is fair contracts for faculty. Obviously, our professors are being impacted by this. Our faculty is being impacted by this. These are the people that teach us. So it's important that they are taken care of. So we want fair contracts for faculty. Our fifth demand is fund the classrooms by cutting administrative bloat, salaries, perks. CSU presidents receive over $70,000 in perks. So this would be car allowances, housing, and gas, car. So these are things, this money could be used for classes. It could be used for allowing more students to come into the CSU system. And, they already make over $200,000. So it's very unnecessary spending for them to receive perks, where I personally feel that they can afford it. Our sixth and last demand is recommitment to the California Master Plan. This was signed in 1960 by actually Governor Brown's father, and it pretty much promises a fully funded CSU. And even though it was signed, they have not stuck to it. They haven't followed it. So we want a recommitment to the California Master Plan. So those are our demands, and it's what we're presenting at the People's Assembly, but we want everyone to also have a decision on if we should add anything, should we take something off. So it's important that everyone comes out. This is the time for you to speak out, to be involved in creating this change. It can't just be a few people, it needs to be all of us. So the People's Assembly will start at 1 p.m., and definitely be there at the rally, and then we'll lead into the march and into the People's Assembly. I'm going to go on to what's next, right? This is what we're going to be talking about. What can we do? This is the launch of our campaign. What can we do to make sure that these demands are going to be met? Because they're not going to be met in one day. It's going to take with more than one day, more than one action, in order for these demands to be met. So one of the things that we're proposing is on May 11th, it's Wednesday, it's a Board of Trustees meeting. It's the public meeting, so we want to organize students and faculty to go to this meeting and to put pressure on the Board of Trustees. If people show enough interest, we are looking into getting a charter bus to take us over there. So I'm going to give out a phone number and an email. So if you're interested in this, please call the phone number or email us with your information, and we'll definitely get back to you. So phone number is 818-677-5919. And the email is csun.sque@gmail.com. Phone number one more time? Okay, yeah. So 818-677-5919. Yeah, okay. And then also another thing that's happening on our campus, April 22nd, Chancellor Weed will be coming to our campus, and he will be speaking. Students are going to be organizing for April 22nd, so definitely also look forward to that. If you're interested in becoming more involved, we have our meetings on Tuesdays at 5 p.m. At Sierra Hall 184. And definitely I encourage everyone to come out. You know, if we want to see change, if we want to see something different happen, then we need to create that change. No one is going to fight for our education. We need to fight for it, and not just for our education, but this is for future generations' education, you know. So it's important that we defend it, and we don't let that effort that past people put into fighting for the classes that we have now, these opportunities that we have to come to a university, that we don't let that just go to waste, because it's slipping out of our hands right now. And if we don't grab it and hold on to it and pull it back, it's going to only get worse. So, thank you.
Testing. Hello. Okay. Oh, my phone's ringing. Let me turn it off. So first, I want to say I wrote down. I really like the name of this series of class action. It's like a triple entendre. It's like class action in a lawsuit, but then it's also like class action because it's students and faculty, and also that it's like, you know, class struggle. So, you know, it's very clever. I like it. I'm really happy that I got to go after Kathy and hearing everything that SQE is doing. And so, I see a lot of the same struggles happening from in and around the nation. So, as I was introduced, my name is Alex Hanna. I'm from Wisconsin. I am a graduate student at the University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I'm also the co-president of the Teaching Assistants Association. It's the oldest graduate employee union in the world. So it was born out of some Vietnam-era protests, so very rich history. So I want to talk a little bit today about the occupation of the Capitol that happened for 2 weeks, over 2 weeks. It all kind of meshed together. And so actually, the day before the occupation started, the TAA had actually been planning an event on Valentine's Day. And the event was going to be called something to the effect, I Heart UW, Scott Walker, or when I say Scott Walker, you have to hiss. Boo, hiss. Although that's not a very Wisconsin thing to do. You would just be very passive-aggressive, actually. We had an event said, I Heart UW, Scott Walker, don't break my heart. And that was because we know that once Governor Walker was going to take office, he was going to enact massive cuts to the UW system. And what that's looked like is, we didn't know how much, but it's turned out it's been something like 15 to 20% he's going to cut to the system something like $250 million. Also along with that is that our chancellor, Carolyn Biddy Martin, is trying to split off the UW-Madison from the rest of the UW system. What that's going to enact in is turning it more into a private institution. We're going to see privatization of public education, tuition rates skyrocketing, and the rest of the UW system left hanging out to dry because they have to provide education to the rest of the state on a severely limited budget. And that dream of going to the UW-Madison and getting that degree there is going to be lost for many Wisconsinites. So we planned this event on Valentine's Day. And Scott Walker, oh, did this go out? Hello, testing? Is it still on? Okay, thanks. I could have done it without, but basically, Scott Walker had come out with a budget repair bill, the bill that was going to cut collective bargaining rights to all the state employees and do many other bad things just a few days before. So we retooled the event. We said, we're going to go and we're going to march on the Capitol. We're going to talk about what Amy was saying earlier, how in the study that her and her colleagues did, that these teaching conditions, we don't have enough time. Teachers are feeling overburdened. They feel like they're cheating students out of education because teaching conditions, the professors and teachers' teaching conditions, the students' learning conditions. And so we retooled this event. We said that we're going to go ahead and we're going to have this event and we're going to say, don't cut the UW and don't kill collective bargaining rights for public employees because students are not going to get the education that they deserve. So we marched to the Capitol, the epitominous Capitol, and with about 1,000 undergraduates, graduates, graduate employees, and faculty, and dumped over 3,000 Valentines that said, I heart UW, don't break my heart, Scott Walker. And some people just like custom designed them. They're very ornate. Dumped them on his desk. And so we were very proud of that, those 1,000 people. But then the next 2 days, as we saw, tens of thousands of people showed up to the Capitol and started protesting the budget repair bill. So the TAA, what we plan to do is for the bill to actually move through, it had to go through the budget process. So there was a open hearing of the Joint Finance Committee of the Wisconsin Assembly and Senate. We packed a line, and we weren't the only people in the line. There were many outraged Wisconsinites getting in that line, and they had said that people would speak as long as they were on the list. It came around midnight for testimony going 14 hours straight, and the Republicans on the committee said they were going to shut down the line. And so we protested loudly. We said, let us speak, we will speak. And but they're basically shutting down voices of people, of the hundreds, and turns out throughout the occupation, thousands of people that were opposed to the bill that testified against it. So around 3 a.m. they actually left, and we decided we're staying. And so we sent out calls on Facebook and Twitter and called all our friends and said, come to the Capitol, bring your pillows and sleeping bags. We're staying here until all our voices are heard. And so we went ahead and occupied the Capitol and stayed there for over 2 weeks. And through that, there was a lot of things that happened. I mean, I think we occupied the Capitol, and days later, the Wisconsin Democrats, the famous 14, they left the state and postponed the bill actually getting passed. And encouraged by that was that it wasn't just, and it just wasn't, it was everybody. There was thousands of people coming to the Capitol every day. The Thursday and Friday of that week, the high school teachers and the middle school teachers, they took 2 sick-out days, an effective job action, and risked their jobs, many of these teachers. And in support, their students walked out in support of them. So hundreds of high school students walking out, coming to the Capitol, marching. And so during the occupation, we found out a lot of things. We found out people come out, people were willing to raise their voices. We found an ad hoc community formed inside the Capitol. The TAA started doing things like getting food and marshaling and making sure that it remained a peaceful protest, that and making sure that the grounds is clean, making sure that we were good stewards of the Capitol building. And coordinating with the other people that were staying in the Capitol, disseminating information. Something that was huge is that in the budget repair bill, Scott Walker had intentionally excluded the firefighters unions and the police unions from being affected by the bill. And what we saw is that firefighters and police marched in the Capitol in solidarity with the rest of everybody that was marching. And firefighters would come with bagpipes and play the bagpipes. Everybody would go crazy that the firefighters were supporting us and supporting the labor movement. And eventually the occupation stopped, like all good things. Eventually it was choked out as Scott Walker illegally closed the Capitol, the People's House, and people were now not allowed back in. But the thing that was built in those 2 or 3 weeks was much bigger than anything I think Scott Walker anticipated. So what are we doing now? Well, the TAA, we're working now. I mean, we're working on the political front. We're working on recalls. We're working to stop the budget now, the formal budget, which makes huge cuts to the UW system that endorses a split of UW-Madison from the rest of the system and affects citizens across Wisconsin in a myriad different ways. We're fighting back on budget cuts on the campus too. We're fighting what our chancellor calls a new budget partnership, basically the plan to cut off UW-Madison from the rest of the system. And we're being public with that. We're protesting. We're out in the streets. We're doing direct actions. We're not going to be quiet on this. She's basically had a field day with this and thinks that she has been using her own position as chancellor as a bully pulpit, sent out mass emails on the university to every person in the Wisconsin system, telling them to lobby for this policy when there's obviously dissent on this. We think this is overreaching. This is not what a chancellor is supposed to do. A chancellor is supposed to encourage dialogue on a campus, is supposed to encourage debate. That's what college and university is for. But no, she's using it to preach and to get her way. And we're doing this in 2 ways, trying to work through the political system and trying to do direct actions. And I think the most important thing in all of this is we need to find ways of getting people involved and feeling like they have ownership of what they're doing, having control of what happens to their state and their university. And that's what we need to do in universities across this nation. And that's how we're going to win. Thanks.
Well, first of all, I'm delighted to be here and a part of this panel for the class action efforts on the 12th and the 13th. And I'm very pleased to be with these other members of the panel, Catherine, Justin, Alex, and Professor Amy, and all. I'm going to try to make my remarks within about a 20-minute frame, and then I think there should be time for interchanging among us and then some interchanging from other people. Now, let me congratulate those of you who have come today for this cause, and congratulate the Students for Quality Education on their platform and their set of demands, which it seems to me is very urgent. I'm going to come back to that in a moment. I must say to you that in the light of the seriousness of the crisis that we have in the United States and in California and elsewhere, and in the university system, period, CSUN and all, I do not want to sound a negative note, but I want to say that we should have a full house today about this. And I do not accuse anyone of being apathetic. I don't think most people in California are apathetic about what's going on. They may not understand it as well, and I don't think the students are apathetic. There is a serious threat to public education in California and elsewhere, and quite specifically to the Cal State University system. It is not an economic crisis at CSUN. It's not an economic crisis at all, in my judgment, in California or elsewhere. The media and the Chamber of Commerce and big business and the federal government and both political parties are not telling the truth about the crisis in the United States. That's the reality. And it's many areas where this is not happening, but in terms of the economic condition of our people, our 308 million people who reside in the borders of this land, it is not an economic crisis, it is a political crisis, it's a moral crisis. It's a crisis between what is right and wrong kind of crisis. It is the failure of our nation to look at ourselves and to at least be honest. The first president of Czechoslovakia, Václav Havel, who was an artist and a writer, an author, a dramatist, who was in and out of jail in Czechoslovakia as he criticized the dictatorial society that developed under the Communist Party in Czechoslovakia after World War II, which was a decision made by the Allies out of World War II, that Czechoslovakia would be more under the influence of the Soviet Union because the Soviet Union armies had swept from the east towards the west and pushed the German occupying and military forces back. It was a decision by the Allies. It was a political decision that said that Czechoslovakia would be under the influence of the Soviet Union and not free to make their own decisions. Havel, in the late 1980s or so, wrote a very wonderful essay that many have claimed as a nonviolent essay called Living the Lie. And a part of his point was, for his own country and for Europe and for a lot of the world, was that if you live the lie that is being told in Czechoslovakia and by the Soviet Union and by the singular Communist Party and by the various collaborationists with the party and the condition in Czechoslovakia, then you can never come to a point where there's a chance that honesty and realism and truth living and truth speaking might lead you to some of the steps whereby you can change your condition. And that I lay in the United States. Our problem is not money. Our problem is the way we've been governing ourselves under the aegis, under the powers of big business and a Republican and Democratic Party that have not demonstrated their care for the well-being of the 310 million people, and under our atrocious determination that we will be the military bully of the earth to make the earth do as we tell the earth to do, under a power structure that in itself is destructive. The issue is not money. It is a moral vision. It's a vision of who we are as human beings, and it is our unwillingness to demand of the powers that be in the United States equality, liberty, and justice for all, and a society that is seeking to do right and to do just by each other and by all. I want to pose against that what we have seen already in this year of 2011. Our foreign policies, our military policies that have helped to shape the world, being challenged in both Tunisia and Egypt by the raw material of what I call nonviolent struggle, that can also be called civil resistance movements. And you see in those instances the collapse of two societies that have been arbitrarily dictatorial and atrocious to their own people, backed up by the economies of Europe especially, but also backed up by our own foreign aid to Egypt, which has been something like $14 billion a year for 20 years. We supported the denial of fundamental human rights in both Tunisia and Egypt until sufficient numbers of the people decided they were no longer going to live in that lie and began to exercise their right to say yes or no, and then to join with other people so that literally millions of them in the streets all over those two lands, essentially working from a nonviolent, civil resistant perspective, caused those countries to tumble against the wishes of Europe and against the wishes of the United States, against dictatorial power that was propped up for 20 or 30 years by our own designs. Now that we ought to recognize what happened there. Now, what follows up there, I have no idea. I'll follow it with some interest. But the point I'm making is there you saw what the power of people who unite around a platform of change, who insist that the wrong must be dismantled and that the people have a right to expect from their governments the well-being and the welfare of all the people. That has been an enormous power. I hope we here at CSUN see that enormous power and understand that that power was called by Gandhi and by Martin Luther King Jr. and by a host of other people in the 20th century, nonviolent power. The power of soul force, the power, as Gene Sharp has put it, the politics of nonviolent action. And so building upon that, I want to say to you that our situation has great possibilities for us if we're willing to use it. A part of what you are fighting now, and we are fighting in California in all this business of public education, is, in my mind, quite simple. The decision on the part of what I like to call plantation capitalism to make public education, both K-12 and higher education, a for-profit enterprise governed by what they think to be the free market, which is one of the great lies that is told in the United States. That's what the Chamber of Commerce has put together across the nation, a huge budget to do, budgets that are raised not by the small businesses who are parts of the Chamber of Commerce, but the big institutions in capitalism that want domination and control. I say this quite deliberately and intentionally. I think it's cowardliness on the part of the males who make many of these decisions, whether in political parties or economic institutions, or even in higher education in California. I think it's cowardly to pretend that we have a financial crisis and then to make students pay for that financial crisis instead of straightening out the issues themselves, as they know full well can be corrected. I think that's cowardly. So that part of the issue we have to somehow face is the fact that we have people in places of power who are cowardly and lack the character to have a vision about we the people, about our society, and about the possibilities, the unlimited possibilities of our young. It is my thesis that education from K-12 through many levels of higher education ought to come from the public dollar and ought to be available to give this nation of ours, California, the finest educational system that any human being, any group of human beings can afford. Now, this was a part of the attraction of California in the 50s and 60s. I don't know if people even want to remember that. What they're doing now is, and what we must fight, is developing a school system, developing higher education, where Jackie Robinson could not go to school, as he did at UCLA 30, 40 years ago, and graduated. Where Tom Bradley, a graduate of UCLA, mayor of this city of Los Angeles for some 20 years, cannot go today. They both came out of sharecroppers' families. They were both among the first members of their families to be able to afford an education, and to afford it because public education at that time had not the goal of profit or privatization, not the goal of being for profit, but the goal of helping children and young people become effective and competent human beings for the many, 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 many roles that we human beings must play in the United States and around the world. So I think the demands must call for a different vision of education. And what I see in part missing from the demands of the Students for Quality Education is the whole business and civil resistance of engendering another kind of power grid that can change the present power structures, both in the CSUN system and the UC system and in the state of California. I don't know if I make that clear. A part of nonviolent struggle, as Gandhi developed it, was to say that people had power. They had life power. And that if they bent their power in conjunction with others, not just their family, but beyond their families into the hundreds and the thousands and the tens of thousands and the millions, as Egypt this past winter, Gandhi insisted that that power of the people would forge a new power relationship in their society, a power relationship that's not there at the present moment, that would then reshape the power grid. I don't know if that's a better way of explaining it. But nonviolence is not passivity. It is not passive resistance. Nonviolence is not pacifism. Nonviolence is not being apathetic. Nonviolence means engendering power in such a fashion with the people and of the people in a fashion that creates a new power equation that the status quo cannot ignore or avoid. That's civil resistance. That's nonviolent resistance. So what I want to try to propose in wrapping this up quite briefly is to say to you that this scene can be reversed probably in 5 to 10 years if we want to do it. But it will require students and faculty working together over a 5-10 year period, providing structure and continuity to make that happen. But it would also require students and faculty not to limit the struggle to the university, but to include their families, and their families to include other families, to include other civic organizations, so that we mobilize a civic society that the banks or the Chancellor Reed cannot avoid. You have very good demands. The second thing about what I want to say in this power grid is that a part of the crisis is due to our bad, immoral, cowardly political parties and political leaders. And I make no hesitation about saying that. Our political parties have fallen down on any kind of responsibility to the 310 million people or the 40 million people in the state of California. They simply do not know us, and for whatever reasons that they're elected officials for the most part, and I do not mean all of them because I'm quietly having some meetings with some political elected officials about some matters. So I'm not trying to denigrate all, but in a general fashion, the political parties are irresponsible. So I wonder, for an example, in your plan, Quality Students for Quality Education, in California Faculty Association, I wonder if you plan, if there ought to be some direct actions aimed at the political parties, not just the legislatures, but at the parties themselves, at the presidents of the parties in California. I wonder if there ought to be some actions planned that go after the kind of extremism that some in the Republican Party and some in the Democratic Party represent. To pretend that we can have a quality of life without a fair, decent, meaningful taxation system or systems is, of course, a lie. And I resent the fact that in the front page of the Los Angeles Times a few days ago, in a major article, it was described how General Electric paid no taxes on their highest profits in 2010, and that they had a whole tax lawyer apparatus that has perfected the gift of making certain that the corporation pays no taxes. FedEx paid no taxes in the year 2010. Many corporations. This is well documented. It's available through scholars who've worked on it, through academics who've written the books and the papers. Well documented. We cannot have political parties who play games about the necessity of our caring for our infrastructure, caring for our roads, but especially for our schools and our colleges and universities. So what about a direct action plan that goes after other units in our society that use their power in such an immoral fashion? And then about the final or last word I want to say is that this can be reversed and changed, not tonight, but in 5 to 10 years it could be systematically reversed. If you develop a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, a serious plan, these goals represent certainly a real beginning. But how do you break these goals down into what we're going to do at CSUN? How do we get the California Faculty Association to come onto the side, verbally and by action, quality education at CSUN and in the Cal State system for all students, and to stop the hemorrhaging of students because of tuition costs and all and fees that are cutting out the Jackie Robinsons and the Tom Bradleys and the Cesar Chavez's across our state. A plan that has strategy in it, that uses mixed action, that develops a lot of people who become powerful spokespeople for this quality education and for what it will take, which develops maybe tens of thousands of people like yourselves and others in every system who become extraordinary voices, informed, courageous, with character, that become a part of a new leadership brand in California. You'd be surprised what the effect of that would be. Both students, faculty, their parents and their families, their clergy, their community leaders and political leaders. You'd be surprised what could happen. Gene Sharp, in his classic book on nonviolent action, collated or gathered from written history 198 different techniques that human beings have used that could be called nonviolent techniques across the last 5, 6, 7, 8,000 years, 198. We know from our experience in the United States there are many more. Well, what about some people who do some serious examination of those methods that have been used and borrowing from some of those weapons creatively and in a surprising fashion to help build a movement in California that can help you achieve the goals you would like to achieve? I am persuaded that in this generation of ours we can move from the cowardliness and immorality of our times in the public arena. I am convinced that we can move from this era and reverse the process and allow millions of people in California, especially our young people, to discover a different vision. A vision, in the first instance, that is a vision of developing a civil resistance movement to say no to the wrong and to say yes with others to the ways in which it can be changed. A vision in which public education for every boy and girl across our land becomes a continuous learning experience in life that allows every boy and girl to tap the infinite potential of life that is in them. A vision that reclaims the notion of equality, liberty, and justice for all. The truth of the matter is that we who want a better society a better Los Angeles, a better California, a better world can have it. But as the Sweet Honey on the Rock singers in one of their wonderful songs have said, we who believe in freedom must not rest until it's won. We who believe in equality, justice, and liberty must take the actions in our own lives and the lives of others and not rest and not give the enemies any kind of a rest until we win a new CSUN and a new Cal State. Thank you.
If you're inspired like I am, make some noise, please. And again, let's thank all of our panelists for a wonderful discussion that we've had today. Let's give them one more big round of applause, please. Thank you all very much. What we'd like to do now is save some time for some questions and answers. So before we started tonight, we passed out some cards for you to write down some questions. If you went ahead and did so, please go ahead and pass them to the middle sections if you would, and we'll have somebody to collect them for you. But as we do that, we want to take some time now to allow the panelists to ask each other some questions, if you may have so for each other, while we go ahead and collect the cards. So if there are any questions for each other, please feel free to go ahead and ask away. I'll ask the first question. How about that? Get the ball rolling. Alex, I want to ask you some of your techniques and strategies that you use at the University of Wisconsin with your state officials. What kind of lessons can we learn or do you have to teach here at Cal State University Northridge can be applied directly?
Excuse me, so the question was what kind of tactics? So I mean, the occupation in the Capitol, we were doing a number of things while we were there. We were occupying the building, obviously. That's one tactic. It's kind of a hard tactic because you have to occupy the building. And the police were actually very cooperative because it was a bill that was also affecting them. And so they were supportive. They realized if they didn't have collective bargaining, what would happen to their own jobs. Some of the kind of tactics that we use were a lot of nonviolent direct actions. When it looked like the senators were going to vote on the bill, there was a lot of people that sat in front of the assembly room, or in front of the Senate room, and made sure that no one could get into the room. And they did that until the Democratic senators actually left the state. And they left the state such that state troopers couldn't go after them. They had to go to Illinois. Otherwise, state troopers could go and get them and find them in contempt of Senate. Other tactics, but it's another, and the tactics don't just have to be direct action-wise. I mean, a lot of the things we were just doing is just, it runs the gamut. It runs the gamut from organizing our own members, doing office visits, talking to them about the power of collective action. It's something like having good social media outlets where you're able to use a website that effectively disseminates information. We had set up a Twitter service, so we were able to coordinate actions within the Capitol, to get volunteers, to make calls to action. So it does run the gamut. I think, and there is no silver bullet of action, of tactics. Silver bullet. Oh, okay. There is no silver bullet of action, of tactics. You assess the situation, you find out what's going to work, and you integrate it. And it's all about a complete kind of set of tactics that are going to contribute to achieving what you set out your demands to be.
Thank you. Are there any other questions amongst the
They
panel themselves?
But they also had many mass meetings and rallies across the state. Unions, teachers, had gatherings all over the state. Isn't that right?
There was, I mean, there were,
Not only down around the Capitol.
right, there were rallies across the state, and there
Yeah.
was, I mean,
And that's an important.
for a matter of time, and, you know, it was labor gatherings, there was gatherings in front of, there's now a corporate campaign against M&I Bank and protesting, which bankrolled Scott Walker's campaign. And so, and not only in Madison, across the state.
But the Koch brothers also bankrolled his campaign.
Yeah,
didn't
the Koch brothers as well,
Koch
and
brothers,
yeah,
okay.
and there's been some movement on trying to do like a boycott campaign for their products, but if you saw the prank call, that revealed a lot as well. And there were a lot of rallies. A lot of times, if Walker was traveling to someplace, there'd be rallies against it. Actually, Americans for Prosperity, the Tea Party group, they were having rallies.
The Koch brothers group. That's
the
their
Koch
official
brothers.
group.
And they were having rallies, and they would get 200 people inside a conference center, and there'd be pro-labor people, 2,000 pro-labor people outside of the conference center. So, making sure that being on their tail was good as well.
We'll begin with our first question from the student audience.
This question is for Reverend James Lawson. How might we target the political parties for direct action?
I didn't hear it.
How might we target the political parties for direct action?
Well, I think that has to be must be planned. But for an example, both political parties have a statewide gathering for their state party structures and leadership. So maybe in 2011, 2012, when they have their state party conventions around California, there ought to be a large demonstration against them.
Okay, thank you. The next question
But
is...
that's only one, but I think
Yes.
I'm a big one for insisting that you can't plan something like from this stage. It has to be the folk on the ground doing the organizing, mobilizing, who need to brainstorm possible direct actions.
Okay. We have our next question. This is for the students, either Justin or Kathy. What kind of action do you think our student body government should be taking to assist change on a higher level?
Well, first, the fact that they got buses to go to Sacramento are great. I think that's one way they can help, since they have resources, being able to provide buses to take people to locations to protest and rally is definitely one way they can help. And also I feel that the way they promote, they have a lot of resources to be able to promote things very well. And being able to promote, let's say, a rally or a demonstration, just how they promote the big show. At that same level, that's definitely where they should be at. It should be just as important for us as it is. It should be just as important for them as it is for us. And that's definitely where I think they could be working a lot on.
Mm-hmm. And to add to that, and I guess just repeat some of the things that you said, as far as like the resources, I believe it's a $6 million budget that they have. And that comes from student fees, and I believe that a recommitment of those fees in that $6 million budget back to the students, that's going to benefit the students beyond their entertainment needs. I think that's one way. I think that we just utilizing that structure. I believe that the students for quality education are on 18 of 23 of the CSU campuses, but the AS, the associated students, are on all 23 of the CSU campuses. So that by them utilizing the structure that's already in place, or by us utilizing the structure that's already in place to disseminate information, to to provide resources and materials and spaces for the things as Reverend James Lawson talked about, like planning sessions where we could have the numbers that should be in these seats come to, such as the People's Assembly tomorrow. Things like that could be organized by AS. We see these as kind of like more fringe things, protests and stuff like that, but there's no reason that the students who are protesting and who are coming to these events, our numbers seem to be kind of like dwindling now, but at the same time, I think that just tasks us that much more with getting what we hear now out to them. And on that same note, the AS elections are tomorrow and Thursday. And like I said, there's like a handful of us here now, but I wanted to, and I'm not sure, it looks like it's being videotaped too, so push this out on your social networks. But there's a slate that was organized by those same students who are holding protests and pushing out this information, and who are not just interested in associated students for how it looks on a resume or a CV. Some of those students are Brandy Hookfin, who's here with us, is Angel Hernandez, we have Eric Mata, Martha Martinez, Omar Ramirez, Strongman Osum, and Amanda Flavin and Sydney Powell. Those are the presidents. So again, go ahead and give up a round of applause for those running for air. And again, hopefully this is the beginning of that change. We over and over again, it seems like there's, especially for the professors who've been here for longer, maybe even some of the students who have come back, like Justin Weiss and Catherine Sorrells, have seen kind of like the cycle and this kind of like cyclical wave of student involvement. And I think that we keep constantly trying to like reinvent the wheel to find ways that to provide that structure and continuity that Reverend James Lawson was talking about. But AS, I think that it could be that structure, that we could use that or use that at least as a supplement to other structures. So I think that I remember last year there was like a slogan and a phrase that went around that is step up or step down, and basically I think that's what needs to happen, is that those individuals who have been gifted with that responsibility of that $6 million budget can do a lot more, just as much, but a lot more, even with those same students who are just as passionate but don't have that $6 million budget behind them or underneath their pen.
Thank you. We have our next question, and this is for anyone. Do you feel that elected representatives from the Green or Peace and Freedom parties would be beneficial? It's for anyone.
Can you repeat the question?
Yes, I can repeat the question. Do you feel that the elected representatives from the Green or Peace and Freedom parties would be beneficial? Yes. Or you can skip that one. So.
I mean, they are elected or no? They're not elected. We need more third-party politics. Well, but there's a qualitative difference. Are there elected officials in those parties, or are those parties useful themselves? The question. Do we need more?
I think this question stems from if, in fact, an elected representative to our leadership was from the Green or Peace and Freedom parties, how do you think that would be different than a Democrat or Republican in those positions of power?
Okay, that's a different question because you still have to get them elected, which is it's a separate challenge.
I don't think it'll make a difference.
Okay.
Personally. I mean, I think Green and Freedom Party people are fine people. I don't have no doubt about that. But I'm not, is this mic on?
Yes.
I'm not sure that the issue is the party and or the platform. It is very tough in the United States for us to develop leaders of character in a society that is permeated with racism, sexism, violence, power, domination, control, and greed. I'm sure that many people here know of the visions in your own family as we even talk about this crisis. So it's extremely hard, and our real problem is that the political parties and very often the political leaders will not talk out of the truth with one another. And when sometimes they do, they use ugly names instead of talking about the human equations with which we're involved. Now, I'm not explaining this well at all, but I just have the sense that it's a more of a moral issue and character issue out of our long history of denial than it is the party. How did the Republican Party change from being the party of Abraham Lincoln to being the party of Newt Gingrich? How did that happen? My parents were Republicans and I grew up as a Republican. So how did it move from the party of sensing there had to be an expansion of democracy that would eradicate slavery and the rest, to now becoming a party of, Pat Robinson and others like that? How did that happen? It didn't happen because of reason.
So a question of introducing more I think the Green Party in particular has a lovely platform that is for, equality on the basis of social class, race, gender. They're great at environmental issues. So there's a great platform there, and I'm not as familiar with the other party. And certainly introducing more parties certainly wouldn't be a bad thing. But I think we also have to pay as much attention to the social structure in which the parties are operating. And I think this is part of what you were talking about. That right now we have a government in which you have a very small group of incredibly wealthy and powerful people that cycle in and out of the top sort of business, corporate, business positions and the top political positions, right? So you have the same wealthy elite that are occupying the top positions in both the business, economic institutions, and our political institutions, and they do so in their own interests, right? And they create crises such as this that lead to enormous, transfers of wealth and institute widespread changes, attacks on workers' rights to form a union, to engage in collective bargaining, attacks on the rights of people to have access to education, and attacks on public. I was just reading in the budget cuts that went through recently, but attacks on public health, and all of these sorts of things. And so if what the party platforms or the number of parties, all of these sorts of things, not that they're not an unimportant question, but I think we also have to think about the structure and the context that we put them in. Because as long as we have a powerful elite, right, who right now have control over both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, then just introducing a third or a fourth party, as long as we maintain that structure, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of change. And so changing the political system so that money doesn't play such a big role in who's making the decisions. And we have people that are actually democratically represented, rather than having how much money you have determine who's being represented, I think would make a really important changes to the context, so that either the parties we have or additional parties or a Green Party, I think, can have a real influence. This one?
No, I'm not going to say that. That was a good statement.
He was just testing the mic, huh? I think it's only fitting to end a controversial topic with a controversial question. So this question is for you, Reverend Lawson. When is it time to ratchet up the activism to include sit-ins and round-the-clock building occupations? When do we know it's time for the CSUN 6 to become the CSUN 600?
Well, I think that's what I was trying to say in part, that you do have to increase the action, but that means you increase the organizing, the training, the planning. That yes, that's the aim, but I don't think seriously that I see the structure and the mobilizing and organizing at that point yet. I think, again, it has to be the people on CSUN campus who are active and working at it, who see when that time has come. Jane Sharp, in his classification of the 198 techniques of nonviolence that have been used across the centuries, categorizes the first stage, and I meant to look this up again, but the first stage of demonstration he calls, I think, protest and persuasion. And he says that that stage is where you do all sorts of things in order to build momentum, to gather in a sense, to gather the troops and the forces. And you do them in a great variety of ways. You can even include such a thing as a sit-in, as a teaching tool, a sit-in at the chancellor's office, or a sit-in in the chairman of the board of trustees office or in their firm. So there can be all sorts of things that happen, but that protest and persuasion stage is where you're trying to build the momentum to do what it seems to me that question implies.
Well, we have one more treat for you all here tonight, and it's something that I think all students can agree upon loving: food. So we have some food for you outside, and we'd love for you to join us in the reception area right outside of the Performing Arts Center. And if you would join me, please, in thanking one more time this wonderful panel of ours tonight who has joined us. And we thank all of you for coming out tonight, and go forth and take action. Thank you very much.